exist outside our atmosphere. Think about it. In terms of managing the resources of this planet intelligently, and we won't need to act like locusts going from planet to planet consuming everything. It's far easier to simply change our ways to become true and compassionate stewards of Earth. Of course, one day in the far future, our local sun will go nova, so this planet will be taken out along with it. So before then, we will need to leave this planet. However, we have millions of years, probably billions of years, before that happens. So if we actually shifted our methods and values to consider the symbiosis between us and the biosphere and its own finite reality, we have more than enough time to master the massive scale projects such as interstellar travel and planetary atmosphere processing and colonization. Tell you what, ask anyone who has worked on moon-based or Mars-based proposals. Will a colony on any of these rocks be based upon human labor and monetary exchange? Nope. So why should we perpetuate such a ridiculous system of social management here on Earth? Person D responds, hardly locusts, but destroying every planet we go to. Money is merely a filing system to show how much something is worth. I think he meant something is worth. Money or not, we'll still have the same problems. Survival of the fittest, that's nature. To think we are above nature because we are somewhat self-aware is naive. Don't get me wrong, I've read your link into TZM website. It has a lot of pointing out, but what the problems are, yet no solutions, at least viable ones. I am interested, so we'll go to a talk/lecture next time there is one local. Very dubious though. When I say read the link, I mean I've spent a good hour or so on the actual website. I respond, actually money is the obsolete middleman that we put in between ourselves and our survival. It's ridiculous. Why should anything have worth in the monetary sense? It only serves a monetary interest, not a human interest. That is why the money sequence of value does not match the life sequence of value. What problems will we still have exactly when we have a system that provides for humanity without the need for monetary exchange? And what evidence is there to back up this prophetic assertion? Survival of the fittest, as I have already pointed out on this thread, was not coined by Darwin, but by right-wing politician Herbert Spencer. Was he an expert in behavioral biology, sociology, or epigenetics? No, he was a politician with an agenda to push. And you're repeating his contrived slogan as though it's a statement of empiricism of the human condition. Did I say we are above nature? No, we need to align with it. However, you need to take into account the environmental conditions which create, reinforce, and perpetuate behaviors. That being scarcity. If you think TZM has no proposed solutions, then you frankly have not paid any attention to the resource-based economic model or natural law economy proposal. Yeah, did you know that that's the focal point of what TZM advocates? Yeah, you maybe need to look at it again. If you have looked into it and rejected it this quickly, then you haven't looked into it fully. It took me several months to fully understand the train of thought and to research enough to know that it wasn't all the creepy, evil things that I initially assumed it would be. It's good that you're at least skeptical, but you need to temper that skepticism with reason. If you shut your mind off to it just because it initially doesn't jive with you, or that you have made huge assumptions ahead of the receipt of information, then that says nothing about the train of thought itself. It says a hell of a lot about you. It doesn't confirm your suspicions. It ensures your ignorance. By all means, be objective and don't agree. But take that stance because you don't have all the facts yet, because you've only taken a fleeting glance at the body of work which supports it. You need to engage critical thinking, not overcritical dismissal. Reserve judgment until you have looked into it completely. Say, for example, we were to both discuss the book Jaws by Peter Benchley. I myself have read it from cover to cover and seen the film numerous times. Now say, for example, you haven't seen the film at all and you've only read the synopsis on the back page of the book. Would you say that because of that, you're in a better position to tell me exactly what the story explores and conveys? There are going to be lectures and screenings worldwide in mid-March. We call it ZDay. It's our annual Global Awareness Day. I myself am going to be attending the London event on March 16th, in addition to hosting my own event in Maidstone on March 9th. There is also a plethora of lectures, films and other media available for free on YouTube for your easy viewing edification. The following links should help as well. I provide links to both the TZM's official YouTube channel and the ZDay Global page. Just so you know, I don't mean any of this to sound nasty or testy or anything. Even if we go our separate ways, having completely disagreed, I still wholeheartedly appreciate that you have looked. Person D responds, my argument is that although there are corrupt people running the current system, it's not really the system that's in fault. It's human greed. Even if you did have a non-monetary system, people will always end up feeling shortchanged no matter what, i.e. I'm working harder than that guy, why are my living conditions the same as his? There is nothing wrong with people getting a realistic performance-based bonus/reward, not like what the bankers, as an example, are getting. I remember seeing a video a while ago by TZM. A guy was talking about the cost of war at the start. Theoretically, it's a nice system, but I'm dubious. I will go to a talk, but I don't think money should be redundant. How we think about it needs to be changed. Not all middlemen are bad. I know you haven't actually said that. Just my thoughts. I respond, okay, first off, there is no such thing as corrupt within a monetary system. I'll explain. What does the word corrupt actually mean? Think of what would happen if just one essential file in your system folder on your computer corrupts. Does your computer carry on working regardless? No. So we cannot call the greedy behavior of individuals and institutions within a monetary market model corrupt, because the system itself is a corruption. We can only talk about corruption when we place it against the empirical benchmark of natural laws and limits. That is why TZM calls for an alignment with nature and the creation of a socio-economic system which honours natural law and doesn't attempt to override it. You say human greed is the root cause. Well, what causes human greed? I mean, come on, you're actually claiming that it's human nature to be greedy. Well, if that were the case, then we would observe an identical pattern of greedy behavior regardless of social systems. Do we get Wall Street banker types in native Tahiti? No, because we are creatures of conditioning. If you're interested, then I've spent about 10 minutes on my podcast show, Dispelling Myths on TZM, TVP and RBE, completely ripping the human nature and genetic arguments to pieces, and the first 40 minutes of the latest Zeitgeist documentary does the same, except there's expert input from people such as Dr. Gabor Mate and Professor Robert Sapolsky. The system itself manifests, incentivizes, rewards, and perpetuates greedy behaviors, because that is what benefits the system. It's a parasite in the truest sense of the word, because a parasite forces you to produce that which it requires to feed on in order to sustain its own life, whilst being a dangerous detriment to your own. That is the relationship between the human race and the monetary system. We are the host, and money is the parasite. You're still making these wide-sweeping prophetic statements and not substantiating them at all. It doesn't matter how many times you make statements of truth with no evidence. It doesn't make them truth. I also like how you tried to explain behavior within a non-monetary system by using a monetary term. Your objections to this are understandable for someone who hasn't read through the materials. In a system where we are free to do what we want with our lives, what business is it of yours what someone else is doing? Why should it matter to you? See, this is a part of values that needs to be shifted away from. In the current system, we're constantly comparing ourselves to each other. But for what? Because you're working harder than another person? So what? What's it to you what someone else does? In a system that isn't even based upon human labour as the prime driver for resource management, infrastructure, processes and distribution? Get over it. Seriously. In terms of reward, then I'll direct you to any works by either Daniel Pink. One book by his is called Drive, is particularly interesting, and also Alfie Kohn, a noteworthy book of his being The Case Against Competition. Essentially, the long and short of it is that in the human brain there are two main incentive systems, intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic is doing something for the very joy of doing it. For the act itself has inherent reward, i.e. the reason why you do your hobbies. And extrinsic are external motivators, such as money, for instance. The trouble is, when we perform for extrinsic motivators, it works in the opposite manner that it is actually applied for and intended to go. Not only does it erode and corrupt intrinsic motivation, but the satisfaction for motivation to do something is also diminished when you are paid to do something. In other words, there is no joy and sustainability in the carrot and stick. However, if you wanted a rather brief rundown of all this particular issue and don't have the time to review the tons of social science on it, there's actually a very good video made by a Canadian friend of mine. It's called The Bribe Mentality, Neglecting and Derailing Intrinsic Motivation. It's about 11.5 minutes long, so it's not that long. Theoretically, it's a nice system. Look at you making overarching statements about a train of thought you've only been introduced to very, very recently. You need to reserve judgment until your understanding of it is complete. I can understand if you're dubious, and I actually applaud that. But don't dismiss it out of hand just because you have to do some legwork of your own outside of your cognitive comfort zone just to wrap your brain around it and absorb it. That's cool that you will go to a talk. I mentioned the YouTube stuff so you can see a great number of talks without even having to stand up from your seat. I can understand how you think money should be kept. However, if history has taught us one thing, it's that we need to keep letting go of what doesn't serve us all in a positive manner, and money simply isn't capable of supporting all life on Earth. The reason why money as the middleman is ridiculous is because we are the only species on the planet who willfully puts a system of debt, exchange, and indentured servitude in between itself and its survival. Money had a function at one point in the past, but now it's obsolete. We have the technological capability to provide for all humanity. Where does money come in if not to exploit, destroy, and restrict? I'll tell you what, I'll make it even simpler. If we lived in a system based on the exchange of, say, apples, and you had 10 apples and I only had 2, then by the very notion of you having more than me, you can demand more services and products than me. And we have realized that the more we have of that medium of exchange, the more of our needs and wants we can demand. The only thing is, the more you have, the less everyone else has. That's the finite reality of a money pool. The more money there is, the less it's worth, and vice versa. It's completely ridiculous. That's why TZM advocates that we just outgrow the need for it by making it completely needless through embracing processes that technically can provide an excess abundance of humanity's needs. Now that's quite a lot I've typed there, and through my 3 years experience explaining this to people, the kinds of questions and assumptions you are making indicates that you haven't looked into this as much as you say you have. Or if you have, then I'd say you haven't paid as much attention as you have implied. Have you read or listened to or watched any of the extensive Q&A media that we've created over a 4-year time span? Because I think the vast majority of your concerns here will be addressed by just viewing those alone. I myself have done about 7 hours worth of Q&A on my podcast show. The person D responds, who created the